Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast as we head into our final segment of the day, and we are going to be reacting to the loss, surprisingly, by the Baltimore Ravens against the Las Vegas Raiders. A game at home. Felt like a huge bounce back spot for Baltimore, who came, a shoe size short of beating Kansas City in Arrowhead to start the year. And now instead, they are 0-2, losing to the Raiders, who pulled off a fourth quarter comeback. And I think that this is a situation where I'm definitely not going to, go full panic mode here for the Ravens. But that being said, some of the concerns that I had for the Ravens coming into this season are already sort of showing their face a little bit. And the first of which is on the defensive side of the ball. Last year, they were the number 1 or number 2 scoring defense in the league. They were elite at all 3 levels and just had playmakers galore. Now, this offseason, you see the mastermind behind that defense in Mike Macdonald, who was their defensive coordinator. He leaves to take the head coaching job in Seattle, takes a couple key assistants with him, and additionally, you see the departures of the likes of a Patrick Queen, who heads out in free agency. He's now in Pittsburgh, and ultimately, I don't think that that's necessarily quite to the level of what I was expecting in terms of their passing defense has just been nowhere near good enough up to this point. And, part of it, maybe you can talk yourself into the fact that Nate Wiggins was unavailable for this game. Arthur Millette is on IR right now. So those are 2 notable cornerbacks in the secondary that you are hoping that, can be part of a solution to this. But the fact that they came into this game against the Raiders had virtually no success on the ground in this game. I did think that the front 7 for Baltimore was excellent, and that's something that I don't anticipate going anywhere. Obviously, you have your big name guys in Roquan Smith and Nnamdi Madubuike to sort of solidify the front there, but Odafe Owe had a really good game. Kyle Van Noy, who I don't even know how he played in this game after fracturing his orbital bone in his face, that he was even able to play in this game. But, they got production up there. Ultimately, I think it was 5 sacks against the Raiders here. But to have Gardner Minshew kind of carve to some degree. Carve is maybe a little liberal there, but carve up the Ravens defense and throw for 276 yards. He had the interception, but after that, he was kind of lights out. And it's easy, obviously, when you're throwing to Devontae Adams, who, yet again showed that he's still one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Even when he had the drop in the red zone, he was able to make up for it by drawing a PI and then ultimately scoring a touchdown there. Brock Bowers also, I just gave some credit to Fuaga of the Saints in terms of most impressive rookies so far to me. Brock Bowers is up there in that conversation. 9 receptions for 98 yards in this game. That the Ravens just sort of got the ball moved on them, despite the fact that for Vegas, they had 17 carries for 27 yards in this game, and you allow 26 points. That is pretty concerning to me on the back end of your defense. Now, like I mentioned, some key pieces in that secondary that should be back within the next handful of weeks, that maybe there's some room for growth there, but that's something that I was concerned about heading into the year, that a bunch of moving pieces here. Their defense will probably take a step back. I just wasn't expecting them to take a step back in the passing game quite to the level that we at least saw in this game. I'll excuse sort of, whatever in the Chiefs game as well. Allowed 350 total yards there, but you're facing Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. So, again, not trying to overreact. We're 2 games in, just talking about what we've seen in 2 games, and that is the passing defense just not being good enough up to this point. And then on the offensive side of the ball, the issue of their offensive line just really not looking great right now. Lost 3 starters from last year to this year, and they haven't really gotten that same push from the running game. Derrick Henry started very slow in this game. I believe it was just 5 yards on his first 7 carries. Ultimately was able to have a big second half to, keep the Ravens ahead in this game for a while. Ended up with 18 carries, 84 yards, and a touchdown. That touchdown drive in the fourth quarter was very impressive from Derrick Henry. Still somebody that I feel like the Ravens would benefit from if they get him a little bit more involved throughout, but obviously the lack of a receiving threat there for Henry is something that's sort of keeping him off the field, maybe more than a lot of people would prefer. But also just the fact that this Ravens team just has not done a great job. And you know what? I will also, before I move off on the offensive line here, this is a very good Raiders defensive front. If they have any strength in their team, it is sort of that front seven where Max Crosby was causing havoc all game long. You have Christian Wilkins there as well. Robert Spillane, a name that isn't necessarily any sort of household name, but Spillane has emerged into a very good top linebacker in that Raiders defense as well. So I'm not saying that this wasn't a tough task for that offensive line, but I thought that Lamar was doing a lot of running around in the pocket, trying to evade people, and obviously they I wouldn't say they lose the game on that final drive where they weren't able to pick up a first down. It was a tie game at that point, but they didn't even really give themselves a chance when Max Crosby comes screaming through the line of scrimmage and dropping Lamar for a loss. And, ends up being just 2 sacks in this game. If it weren't for Lamar Jackson being Lamar Jackson, I thought it would have been a handful more. And Lamar, a lot of people are sort of getting on his case for this game. It wasn't a great performance from him, but I'd be far more concerned with the defense, again, for the struggles in their secondary, having their front seven step up the way that they did, and having Gardner Minshew be the one to sort of be very efficient. I believe he was 30 of 38 in this game for 276 yards. That is just nowhere near good enough, and the front seven sort of bailed them out to some degree. Raiders lost 43 total yards on those sacks. There are so few stats when you look at the box score of this game where it's like, okay, well, that's why the Ravens lost. I don't think that there's really any good justification for it. I thought that they just sort of continued to hurt themselves throughout. And I'm talking about, the secondary, an issue, offensive line, an issue. How about the penalties, though, in this game as well? 11 penalties, 11 flags for 109 yards. Just no reason for that. And Derrick Henry was very good. Couple of false starts late in that game also did them no favors whatsoever. Just not really much of an excuse for being a running back, getting a false start. One of those plays included, it was a QB sneak. I think it was Isaiah Likely in. And Derrick Henry was just lined up in the backfield. He's not even ever going to get the ball in that situation. What are you jumping for? Not a very smart play from the veteran. Now, ultimately, I'm not panicking about the Ravens here. This was a really bad loss to an inferior Raiders team. That being said, though, I don't know if they just sort of got caught up in the moment or what. There were multiple times where it seemed like, okay, yeah, this game is over. It's now a 10-point game in the fourth quarter against Gardner Minshew and the Raiders. This is not a game that you lose, but ultimately, I don't know whether it was a lack of focus, whether it was just the incompetence of parts of that roster. You just can't let yourself blow that game. And ultimately, again, Lamar Jackson, not on his case here necessarily. And again, especially, he didn't play great down the stretch, but also when Max Crosby is right in your face, it's hard to make any plays really come to fruition. But this was a disappointing game for them. But like I sort of just mentioned as well on the other side earlier in this show about the Bengals being 0-2, nobody has really established themselves in that division where, like I mentioned, Bengals 0-2, the Steelers are 2-0, but they don't even know who their quarterback is going to be moving forward. I believe they've scored just 1 touchdown in their first 2 games against, couple tough defenses, not elite defenses on either end though. So, I don't know how much faith I can fully have in them. And then you have the Browns, who are now back in the win column at least, but we're kind of on Deshaun Watson bench watch to some degree. I personally think the Browns are going to stick it out with Deshaun Watson through the majority of this year, probably the entire year. But a lot of people are at least speculating the idea of that Jameis Winston could be taking over there. So nobody in this division has all the answers right now. I think it would be foolish to get ahead of yourself. And I know some of the statistics surrounding what it's like for teams to start 0-2 and to make the playoffs. But my response to that as well would be, I highly doubt any of those 0-2 teams that miss the playoffs are as talented as the Ravens are. Now, I don't think that the Ravens are at the same level. I did think that they got worse over the course of the offseason, that, they're going to have some proving to do from here on out. I don't think that, I mentioned that there's 3 new starters for them. I don't even think they have an answer right now, really, at right tackle. Not sure what's been going on there between McCary and Rosengarten, sort of splitting snaps. I don't know if it's McCary getting injured or what, because it's not like Rosengarten has been, too impressive. But I'm also talking right tackle depth here, which doesn't really land with the majority of the audience. So I'll steer away there right now. But I think that ultimately, when you talk about where the Ravens are in their standing, they're still one of the best teams in the NFL. They still have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. That you can never just count them out entirely, but you do wonder, with all of the missing, moving pieces from last season to this season, that it really doesn't surprise me all that much to see the slow start. But that being said, the beginning of their schedule is pretty tough, where we just saw them play the Chiefs. This Raiders game felt like one they kind of had to have. Now they are in Dallas next week, at home against the Bills, and then in Cincinnati in the following 3 games. I highly doubt they come out of all of that 0-5, but given what the schedule is, I don't think it's the most unrealistic thing in the world. I think they're going to come in next week and be pissed off big time and end up taking it to the Cowboys, who I think are also vulnerable right now. But, this is not a situation they were hoping to be in to start off the season, feeling like they could have, They probably feel like they should have beat the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. And now here they are 0-2 facing, a few really tough teams in these next coming weeks. This is where the pressure starts to ramp up. I'm not in panic mode now, but I'm definitely not sitting comfortably right now, and I don't know how you could. But let me know what your thoughts are in the comments section for the Ravens moving forward. But that is all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for tuning into the GSMC Sports Podcast. Thank you to the GSMC Sports Network for allowing us to host this show. Remember to like, follow, subscribe wherever you keep up with us. You can check us out on social media as well for more exclusive short content. And we will be back tomorrow, same time as always at 2:00 p.m. Eastern. We'll have reactions to tonight's game between the Eagles and the Falcons and more from the world of football. So till then, we will see you then. Take care. Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.